Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. One of the most successful U.S. political strategists over the last 30 years is now warning his Republican Party they are headed towards decisive losses in the midterms and will lose their congressional majority. Karl Rove, a former senior advisor to George W. Bush and architect of Bush's successful presidential campaigns, says the GOP is in trouble even if Republican redistricting efforts keep outpacing Democrats and generate additional GOP House seats.
Even if the Republicans pull it off, that means between 8 to 12 offset by 5 to 6. So the Republicans may pick up a net of 3 or maybe of 6. Now, maybe that's enough to control the House, but maybe not, because that'd be a very small number of seats that would be lost otherwise. And with the president's approval rating where it is and with the normal malaise that we have, it's hard to believe that the Republican losses are only going to be 5 or 6 seats.
There are some political analysts who predict that even with GOP redistricting, a Democratic tsunami is coming that will give Democrats a pickup of 30 to 40 seats. Karl Rove would not go that far, but he noted that carving up congressional districts, while not a new phenomenon, is also usually not very helpful. And he warned that the GOP efforts to dilute black voters could backfire and make previously safe Republican districts more competitive.
You could, in essence, take, like here in Texas, take big cities, which are typically Democrat, and split them up among several sort of suburban and rural Republicans, and thereby reduce their margin and make them more vulnerable in an election year. Same thing could happen in the South, where you take these large black-dominated cities like New Orleans or rural areas like in South Carolina, that are dominated by blacks and who are traditionally Democrat voters, and split them up into several different Republican districts and make things more problematic in a swing year. Nothing ever plays out exactly in politics as we think it does.
Recently, the Virginia Supreme Court struck down a voter-approved congressional redistricting plan for the Commonwealth. The court ruled the Democratic-led legislature violated procedural requirements. Democrats had counted on Virginia adding 4 seats to the state's Democratic delegation, moving from a 6 to 5 advantage to a 10 to 1 advantage. The blocking of the plan is a setback for Democrats in their redistricting wars with the GOP, but it's not a huge setback given the latest polling. The surveys indicate that Democrats are so far ahead that they are still in a great position to win back control of the U.S. House. Under last year's congressional district map, data analysts believe that Democrats needed only a 1 percentage point advantage on the generic favorability question, the ballot question, to win enough seats to take control of the House. Now, because of this year's redistricting, the analysts have raised the generic ballot bar for Democrats to 3 to 4 points. Democrats are clearing that, as CNN's Harry Enton notes.
And what do they lead right now by in the national House vote polls? Well, their average lead, it's about 6 points, which you don't have to be a mathematical genius to know that 6 points is significantly wider than, 3 to 4 points. But that leaves Democrats with a much smaller margin for error, right? It leaves them at the upper end of this range that if the polls, let's say the election were held today, if the polls were off by just 2 points, or if I were to actually draw that so that our viewers could actually see it, 2 points, that means if there was an error, 2 points in the wrong direction, Democrats all of a sudden might not win back the House at all. And more than that, on the eve of the election, we still have months and months to go, so these polls can change. But even if on the eve of the election, you look historically speaking, the real margin of error, you look at all the errors historically speaking, we're talking about closer to plus or minus 7 points. So what that essentially means is, yes, Democrats would be favored going into the elections today if, in fact, this were the polling average nationally, this 6-point lead, but they'd be significantly, the favorite would not be anywhere near as big of a favorite as they were just let's say a few weeks ago.
Democrats are favored, but just not as much as a few weeks ago. There are some historical patterns to keep in mind. In 2018, the first midterm election in Donald Trump's first presidential term, Democrats went into Election Day ahead by 3 percentage points on the generic ballot question. When the actual election votes came in, Democrats gained a net total of 40 House seats. It was the largest Democratic sweep since the 1974 midterm elections at the height of Watergate, when Democrats picked up a net gain of 49 House seats. Before the latest redistricting developments, most pollsters and political analysts predicted that Democrats were heading this year towards a pickup of between 20 and 40 seats. And keep in mind, Democrats only need a net gain of half a dozen House seats to take over the majority. Prediction markets are still bullish on the Democratic chances, even though the market numbers have dropped a bit.
About a month ago, and look at that, Democrats had an 86% chance. You look at it now, well, that advantage is down to about a 74% chance. And that, of course, makes a whole heck of a lot of sense, given that the lines are going to be redrawn heading into the 2026 election in a much less favorable way for Democrats than we thought that they were going to be. So the bottom line is this. Democrats in the catbird seat still, but not nearly the favorites that they once were, or at least what we thought they were going to be, just say, a month ago.
A lot can still change before the midterm elections. There will be more court rulings, and the news environment may shift before the fall. Still, most elections do not move very much between Memorial Day and Labor Day. During the summertime, most Americans, including most voters, tend to tune out the news and politics. So the baseline numbers now are getting a lot of attention. And by all accounts, Democrats are in a strong position to take the House majority. Control of the Speaker's gavel and the majority control in Congress is huge because the majority party sets the agenda, the calendar, and controls all House committees. Also, Democrats are already sitting on articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. And the expectation across the political spectrum is that if Democrats do take control in the House, they will impeach Donald Trump, a vote that can pass with a simple House majority. Conviction in the Senate trial requires 2/3, but even that could get interesting if Democrats also take control of the Senate and Republicans, looking ahead to 2028, decide that dumping Trump is the GOP's only lifeline. For now, the GOP's most respected strategist says Republicans are headed for major losses this fall. And with Karl Rove stating that redistricting is not going to make much of a difference, the anxieties in the GOP are intensifying. Did you know that the big wireless carriers like Verizon and AT&T made over $18 billion in profit last year? How? By overcharging you for unlimited data, most of which you probably aren't even using. But what if you could get paid to use your phone less and only pay for the data you do use? Well, with Noble Mobile, you can. For just $50 a month on their No Bull plan, you get unlimited data, and whatever data you don't use, you get cash back right in your pocket. People who switch to Noble can save an average of $500 to $1,000 a year. It's a no-brainer. And by switching to Noble, you're directly supporting TYT and our mission of bringing you honest, independent news. So give Noble a try and make the switch today. Scan the QR code on the screen now or visit go.tyt.com/plan. That's go.tyt.com/plan. By the way, in Maine, incumbent Republican Senator Susan Collins is facing new health-related questions in her re-election campaign. There has been an unusual and stunning development in one of the most important U.S. Senate races this year. The battle in Maine between incumbent Republican Senator Susan Collins and Democratic challenger Graham Plattner may determine which party controls the Senate. And watch this.
Governor Mills dropping out of the race just last week. Now we have the general election set in this battle for the Senate.
Headline, fears grow as Republican senator in crucial re-election battle seen constantly shaking during interview. Headline, worse than it's ever been. Susan Collins shaking in interview fuels health speculation.
I guess plain and simple, I got to ask you, is Graham Plattner too far to the left? Is he too extreme for Maine?
I believe that will be the conclusion of Maine voters, but obviously I don't take anything for granted.
A lot of voters in Maine say they no longer take Collins' health for granted. The moderate Republican, who is 73 years old, is seeking a 6th Senate term. But her tremors have sparked intense reaction across the political spectrum. Check out that video at the link below. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.